Thanks, comrades and friends, and can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country and pay my respect to their elders past and present. Can I also acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, trade union leaders who are here, but more importantly than any of us, the working people who are here. Working people sending a message to those people up on the Hill, in the House of Representatives and the Senate, that jobs matter. That jobs matter. You hear a lot of rhetoric from this government about Australian jobs and employment. But what they have said about doing with conscious policies written in legislation is the replacement of Australian seafarers around our coasts with foreign workers, and the replacement of the Australian flag on the back of Australian vessels with a foreign flag. And when employers raise this with people from the department and representatives of the government, they were told very explicitly, well, what you should do is just reflag your ship and employ foreign workers instead of Australian workers. It's not on. And I pay tribute particularly to people from the Portland. There you have the most crass example possible, whereby under Australian law it is permissible to have a temporary licence given, but only when an Australian vessel is not available. That's what the legislation says. And it has to be for a temporary voyage. But what we have in Portland is pretty simple. There's two destinations, Portland and Western Australia. Resources from Western Australia, refinery in Portland, Victoria. It's not complex, it's not temporary, it's not casual, it's permanent. And it is an absolute abuse of the legislation, an absolute conscious abuse by this government to allow a foreign ship to do that work. And what's more, the workers, of course, were kicked out off with no notice in the middle of the night. In the middle of the night. Now, there's a range of reasons why, as an island continent, it's important that we have an Australian shipping industry. Firstly, there's the reason of national security. At a time where we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Battle of the Coral Sea, we should acknowledge the relationship which has always been there between our merchant fleet and our military fleet. The exchange of skills that are required. The people who run our naval fleet, who run our ports, who run our ships, those skills are interchangeable. And if we don't have an ongoing Australian fleet with the Australian flag on the back, we're training at places like the AMC in Launceston, then that will have a long-term impact on the defence of this country. And that was acknowledged by the Workforce Forum that I set up as a minister, that made very clear recommendations and established for $10 million, a minuscule amount, a long-term workforce development plan, one that was supported by the Navy, one that was supported by the industry, one that was supported by all of the unions, and they walked away from it when they came into office. Secondly, there's the reason of our national economy. If there are two areas of industry that are important to a nation state, they're aviation and they're shipping. That's why most countries in the world recognise that. The Jones Act recognises that in the United States. recognises that there's an economic interest in having a domestic shipping fleet to undertake domestic voyages around the coast, but also that there's an international argument as well of why you want to see the Australian flag, like we want to see the flying kangaroo on the back of planes all around the world. An economic interest that is very clear. And thirdly, there's an environmental interest. Every time there's been an incident, be it the Pacific Adventurer, the Sheneng, they've had something in common. There hasn't been an Australian flag on the back of those vessels. Because Australian workers who work around our coast understand where the ships need to go. For the Sheneng, of course, off Gladstone, it just forgot to turn through the channel. So it hit the Great Barrier Reef and ripped a great big damn hole in it. The incident in New Zealand off its major port, again, a foreign flag ship of convenience. And that's why as well, there's a third interest, the environmental interest of having that knowledge, skills-based, of people who run the ships around our coast. So I say to you that you're not just defending your jobs and the jobs of your co-workers, you're defending the national interest. And I pay tribute to you for being here day after day and continuing to keep up the struggle. And I say that the Labor Party is with you. And there are good people in the Parliament as well, like my mate Bob Catter, who will always be with you as well, consistently. Glenn Sterle in the Senate has done an amazing job of having hour after hour in the Senate through those committee processes, making a difference. Local members like Josh and Brian, who are here from Tasmania, and Freo, they're standing up, they understand. And if you look at the prospects, you look at the Tasmanian industry, who were investing $100 million in a new ship, ready to go. And this government discards the importance of that investment as well, because there's an industry here as well potentially for us in terms of the shipbuilding industry that we should be encouraging to thrive in this nation. So thank you for all that you do. We'll continue to fight the fight. I'll go in the budget lockup and have a look at what latest atrocities we can expect tonight. But I assure you, on behalf of the Australian Labor Party, Bill Shorten and the team, that we stand in solidarity with you. Thanks very much.